Hello and welcome into the Falcons Podcast. Let me add in our friends over there on Facebook and on Twitter, and then we will get going. Thanks so much for jumping in. All right, and we are live. What's up? My name is Garrett Chapman, and this is the Falcons Podcast with your host, Garrett Chapman. It's been a pretty busy day here, and we have a lot to get into. Kevin Stefanski was officially announced as the 20th head coach in Falcons football history. How you feeling? You have some answers? I got a couple of my reactions here that we'll get into here on the podcast today. If you've got something you want to say, anything that you took away from this press conference, something that you'd want to learn kind of moving forward, if you have a question just in general, drop it into the chat. We'll get to as much as we can throughout the show. But look, I'm excited about it. I think we've got a lot to get into, and I'm going to dig into a lot of these reactions here on the show. But again, if you have something in particular that you want to see or hear about, Super Chats are the best way to do that. But on top of that, give me a follow at GChapATL. If it's your first time here on the show, make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to drop a comment. Let me know it's your first time. And then we'll see you again on Thursday, because we do it every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock. And we love having you here. Big thank you to all of you who are some of our repeat members. I'm going to get to some of these. I got Keith Robbins, who just became a new member. Welcome to the show, welcome to the program, just in general. Big subscriber here. Keith Robbins says, "In Kevin, we must trust." I'll take it. Yeah, it's kind of the vibe that I got from a lot of Falcons fans. And I feel like we're kind of moving into that sort of realm. A lot of people had some feelings at first, and then I think people are starting to trend in that direction. If you're one of those people, or if you're not one of those people, let me know. I see Rusty Moore, who's also a member here, says Reese calling plays is the only thing I don't like. That dude sucked everywhere he has been so far. And good question about Arthur's cooking today, Garrett. Appreciate you, Rusty. If it wasn't me mixing up Brian Callahan and Bill Callahan, which is like just a silly goose type of moment for me, but I whatever. It happens to all of us. We if it's not the silliest thing I've said, it's I've said some pretty dumb things before, but oh well, whatever. But no, Tommy Reese calling plays. I mean, that's going to be a major thing here to address here for the Falcons, just in general. That was something that I think I was the most surprised of. I really believed that Kevin Stefanski was going to come in here and call plays. And I don't think he's sucked everywhere he's gone. I don't think that's necessarily fair per se. The Browns struggled last year, but I think that had a lot more to do with the personnel that the team had. They finished 30th in total offense, and scored 31st in scoring. So 16.5 points per game, I believe, was the number, but the number did go up about a full point once Tommy Reese took over. I don't think that who's calling plays had the biggest impact on everything. I think the issues they had at starting quarterback were pretty large. The fact that they had no real skill players on the outside. Harold Fannin was probably their best skill player. Dude's a rookie. You have two rookies backing him up at quarterback. You have two rookies in the backfield. You have a rookie at tight end. Man, they were strapped, and it was not a very good situation for them. Both of these guys are going to come into a much better situation in Atlanta. And when Tommy Reese was in college, I mean, he spent 3 years at Notre Dame. He was 30th in FBS in scoring. He was 20th in FBS in scoring, and he was 42nd in FBS in scoring. But again, the third year that he was there, it still scored about 31.5 points per game. It kind of lived in that range of 31 to 35 points per game, which is generally pretty steady. And for the type of offense that Notre Dame was running, that's pretty good. And by the time he got to his third year, I think they had some quarterback issues and some questions at that. It was Marcus Freeman's first year, and they got off really poorly in that season. When he went down to Alabama, I'd say he adjusted pretty well with what his personnel was requiring of him. And they scored 34 points a game. They were top 25 in the country in scoring offense. So to say he sucked everywhere he's gone, especially given the fact that he's 33 years old, I don't think that that's necessarily fair, if you will. I don't think we've seen the best of Tommy Reese. I want to see what he looks like with a personnel group like we have now, with a Bijan Robinson, with a Drake London, with potentially a Kyle Pitts, Michael Penix when he comes back. There's potential in this unit. And I think with this offensive line, which is another massive detriment that the Browns had, they didn't have one really. I mean, they went through several iterations of an offensive line in Cleveland. And the Falcons, I mean, for all of the struggles that the Falcons offense had, and the offensive line had some bad days, right? I mean, it happens, but they played with the same group of guys all season for the most part. I mean, Matthew Bergeron missed 2 games. That's it. Aside from the injury, of course, the massive injury to Caleb McGarry at the beginning of the season, that caused a lot of worries for the Falcons. And then you have Chris Lindstrom, who got hurt in a game, and Jake Matthews, who got hurt in a game. Neither of those guys missed a game. They played effectively every single snap of the season together, and that is huge. Continuity. I've long believed that continuity is the most important part of an effective offensive line, and that's what the Falcons have here. And you add in all the skilled players. I think there's some really good potential here. And I was surprised. That was my first major takeaway here, is that Tommy Rees is calling plays. I was surprised by that. I'm not disappointed, and I know a lot of fans are disappointed. I had a lot of people reach out to me via text message and say, "What the hell why is Tommy Rees calling plays?" I thought the Falcons were bringing in a offensive guru to be their head coach, and I'll tell you this: the majority of the offense planning and everything else that goes into it, all of that happens between Wednesday and Saturday. All of that happens in the buildup, and then what happens day of, he's gonna have input. But he also has a lot of other jobs. He has a lot of other things that he's doing as a head coach. He's going to be on that headset, and he's going to have a say on things that happen. But I think ultimately him being able to step back, he's learned something over the last 2 years, because he has given up play calling duties each of the last 2 seasons at some point in the midseason. So that gets me into my second big point. It's the fact that this is something that mattered to me a lot. And look, credit to one of one of the listeners on the podcast. He shouted out, he wanted me to ask this question. Somebody else asked it in a different form, but basically asked the same question about lessons learned in Cleveland. And that was something that I was really going to be looking for in this press conference. What did you learn from the bad years in Cleveland? Because the years were pretty bad in Cleveland at times, right? They were pretty damn bad. Yeah, I mean, you don't have a record like you did without, some kind of lesson that you were going to have to learn. And the first one was Tommy Rees, letting him call plays, letting him do something established here. And the second was, this was the quote. All right, I don't want to get this wrong. It's smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. That's probably the nicest possible way he could say that the organization had some issues. Some of those tough moments are going to make us better, he said. In this career and this business, sometimes you have to navigate tough times. I know this. You're going to get the best version of me. You're also going to get somebody who is going to get better every day. We are going to put our heads down and we are going to work. And that was something that I felt mattered in this press conference. It's a little too, I don't know, poetic for me. I guess you could say. I love phrases like that. At the same time, I use them all the time. But I don't know. It felt a little cheesy at that time, but I did feel better. I was reading Josh Kendall of The Athletic, and he had a good comment. It was sources that told The Athletic that the Falcons, Matt Ryan specifically, conducted more than 15 interviews with Stefanski's former players and coaching colleagues during the interview process. They did that for Stefanski. They did it for Tommy Rees. They've done it for a lot of these different aspects of these hires that they've made, which tells me that, first off, they knew effectively that Tommy Rees was going to come in and be the offensive coordinator and likely call plays before it was officially announced. They kind of went through their due process and everything else, but it feels like that was the plan from the very beginning. But on top of that, it seems like the players and coaches really still felt very highly about Kevin Stefanski, about his preparation, the way that he was coming into things, and maybe even the lessons that he has learned and can bring to Atlanta. I think that's going to be a good thing because, it's not like the Falcons have had much more success than the Cleveland Browns have, just all time. You really can't say that because the Falcons are not really well positioned historically. But at the same time, I think that the roster in Atlanta is in much better shape. And if he can bring some of those lessons from Cleveland and take it to Atlanta, then I think that could be a really good thing. I'm going to jump into some of your comments here. John Harrell says, what were your thoughts? Rolling through them. I just wanted to give you a shout out. I just saw that. Dossier Gaming says, Tommy Rees calling plays has me worried, especially after Zach Robinson. They're different play callers. I mean, he's not a first-time play caller. He's 33 years old. He's been in this league for a very long time. Maybe not very long time. He's been in the league. He's been calling plays for 5 years, right? I mean, he's had years of experience despite being so I guess it's very long, despite the fact that he's 33. He's my age, basically. He's just a little older than I am. And he's been calling plays for a long time, but for relatively speaking, I guess you could say. But I don't know. I'm willing to give him a chance. I'd say it wasn't. He doesn't have an awesome track record. Like, he's not a genius, I guess you could say, like a Kyle Shanahan or something. But it is going to be kind of from that Kubiak tree, that sort of style, if you will. And I'm excited to see what that looks like. I mean, using a Bijan Robinson, you talk about the gap scheme, you talk about the wide zone, you talk about all these other different facets of versatility, I guess you could say, that Bill Callahan is going to bring in this offensive line. I'm excited to see what that looks like. The fact that they talked a lot about play action and going under center and building off of a strong running game. Those are things that I like. Those are things that I like a lot. And I think ultimately this is a roster that's set up to do that. I think you need another running back. I think you might need another center. I think that's just sort of where I'm falling on it. Ryan Newsle's fine. Like, he's a good player, but in a perfect world, I probably see the Falcons upgrading at center. And then you're pretty much good on your offensive line. I'd like to see depth at the left tackle, specifically at tackle, left or right tackle, maybe a swing tackle. Somebody who can come in and do that, depending on what you do with Storm Norton. I believe he's a free agent at the end of the season anyway. But ultimately, I think that the offense is going to be in pretty good hands. I do think that Kevin Stefanski, and talk about Tommy Rees calling plays, he's going to have a major influence on what this offense looks like. And if it doesn't work out with Tommy Rees, Stefanski can take over calling plays. This isn't something that it's set this way. It's not like it was with Zach Robinson, where Zach Robinson was the only guy with play calling experience on the coaching staff. There's nobody else on this roster, on this team, who had play calling experience last fall. And I think that set them back. That's not going to be the case, because I want to say Bill Callahan has a stop. And I think he called plays at one point. Maybe he didn't. I know he's head coaching experience, but I would not be all that surprised if several different people on this team have play calling experience. So you have other options. It's not the same situation as what it was with Zach. Keith says, you did a great job. I appreciate you. You listeners, man. I mean, I appreciate you guys. Y'all pick me up. I love it. Eric Noah says, good evening. How are you? I feel good. Got a lot to talk about. With the new head coach, and we got updates on a general manager search. We got a lot to get into. Jacob says, hi, buddy. Start panting like a dog. All right, never mind. I don't know who you are. Okay. I won't do that. Rio Deshaun Alexander Smith says, whether we like it or not, Kevin is the coach. If we can get the defense great, the offense good, and special teams average, we should win 10.5 games. I love that idea. I mean, that's something with my mentality heading into this season or this off season, I should say. I really want to see the way that this front office, which we don't even have a full front office, we don't have a general manager, but we're not at that stage yet. I want to see what it looks like when they can go all in on a defense. For a very long time, the Falcons have been very offensive focused, and for good reason. You had Matt Ryan, you have Julio Jones, Devonta Freeman, you go through, Jake Matthews is a high paid player, offensive line, Mohamed Sanu, like all these years of really, really good offense, and kind of left the defense alone, and you kind of built it up through the draft with a lot of whiffs, and then you're just a race to 35 points, or if you get to 30, whatever. I mean, it's the way they were built. And one thing that I think that this team has potential to do moving forward is really invest in a defense. I posted a mock draft for the first time, and it's my first one that I've kind of sort of looked into. It's not a lot. It's not something crazy, but I invested heavily in a defense. And you need a wide receiver. I mean, you really need a wide receiver, but defense is going to be a major focus this offseason. And I've started dabbling in some free agent picks, people who I like, people who I think could really add to this unit. you see the teams who spend a lot in free agency and really flesh their team out and went all in on young quarterbacks, the New England Patriots. It worked out pretty well for them. And it's not about building your team through free agency. It's about finding the players who complement your team. And I think if you can just invest a little more into this defense, I think they can be really, really damn good. Really damn good. And especially if you look at some progress that you could see potentially from some of these rookies in year two. Obviously, progress is not always a straight line. It's not always linear, but at the same time, you just get a little bit of progress. You take a step forward. Then all of a sudden, you like you said, Rio, you're talking about a potentially great defense. You got some things that you have to address. I mean, what are you going to do with Caden Ellis? What are you going to do at cornerback? What are you going to do defensive line? That's going to be a major thing to talk about this offseason. But I would say the Falcons are in pretty good shape. On offense, it all comes down to the quarterback. I'd say the offense has a chance to be very good if Michael Penix can be good, right? If Michael Penix can take his game to serviceable level, to maybe not, I don't even want to say franchise quarterback level, but I mean, shoot, if you can come in and be a little bit more consistent for you, and then you're looking at what weapons you have on this team, you're talking about a team who can very much be a good football team, a good football team. It's just the quarterback position's held them back since Matt Ryan left, and since the Falcons traded him. I mean, shoot, even in 2021, that he gave you below average quarterback play, but at the same time, that's how close it's been for the last 5 years. Like I always say, if there's a super chat, I always go straight to the front. Justin 8006 hits me with a super chat. Big thank you. Justin says Stefanski will probably help design the plays while Tommy Rees calls the plays. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's my exact thought. And when he was on with Sports Radio 92.9 The Game after the press conference, he said the exact same thing. He said he's going to be involved in the process from Wednesday to Saturday. And he'll be in the headset too on Sundays. And so, Justin, you nailed it. I mean, this is exactly right. He's going to be very involved. Very, very involved. Dossier Gaming says that was me. Right. I don't know what you guys were talking about there. Sorry. Keith Robbins continues. He says, I want to see a quarterback under center. Are we going to see that more this year? Yes, I do think that that's going to be the case. That's going to be something that Michael Penix is going to have to get comfortable with. I would imagine based off of the language that these guys talked about. I do think that Michael Penix is the guy. Just based off of context clues, I guess you could say. It seems like Stefanski's in on Michael Penix. And ultimately, finding a general manager and a head coach for 1A, quarterback very clearly is 1B. Stefanski called himself a maniac for player development, saying, quote, I think you can see a player on tape. You can get through progressions, layer the ball, push the ball to all areas of the field. This is Kevin Stefanski talking about Michael Penix. Obviously, was very productive in college, has had some really, really, really good moments in the pros. So I just see a young player that will continue to develop and continue to get better. Look, we know that he's got the physical gifts. We know that Michael Penix can do that. But the fact that he calls himself a maniac for player development, and we saw some of the actual plans that Stefanski had with his quarterbacks in Cleveland, and you add that with the talent that Michael Penix has, I think you could see a potential difference maker. I'm not all the way in, not yet. I think that you need to see something from Penix. I mean, obviously Stefanski's track record is not awesome with the quarterback position, certainly to say the least. So I'm going to hold out until we actually see something, especially for a guy who's coming off of his third ACL injury, a guy who's repeatedly struggled with injuries. He said rehab is the most important thing right now. But there are things that you can learn off the field. I need to see him stay healthy, because until Michael Penix can be healthy for a full season, we're not going to know what we have, and this is going to be the year too, that if Michael Penix is going to have his fifth year option picked up, it's going to have to be shown on the field in 2026, because if he can't stay healthy in 26, then he can't be a franchise quarterback. He cannot be your guy. So that's the critical thing. So arm talent aside, I need to see some health. I need to see some durability. because if you don't, the best ability is availability. There goes another one of those phrases that I talked about earlier in the show that I love using so much. You got to be able to play. You have to be able to be on the field. But I love the fit potentially and the marriage of Bijan Robinson and what this offense can look like. I really see some potential there. I really see a lot of potential. John Harrell says, I mean, he's basically calling Kevin's plays, right? Yes. Yeah. Kevin Stefanski is going to go through the play calling. He's going to go through all of it. And they're going to do a good job of that. I'm pretty confident in that. Dossier Gaming says, why hasn't Nate Ollie gotten a DC position yet? I'm grateful he's staying, but I see DC written all over him. That's a good question. I would imagine Nate Ollie gets the nod at some point to go be a defensive coordinator. He didn't this year. I can see it in his future potentially. But that's a good question. I'm not sure. Just not yet. The longer he stays with the Falcons, the better, because we saw some of that potential. I mean, I'll tell you this much, Dossier. If the Falcons come out and do what they did this past year in 2026, and you see some of that growth, you see James Pierce, you see Rukaroro, you see Brandon Dorlus and Jalen Walker and all these guys, Laquale London, all these dudes come back and make progress, I would not be surprised if Nate Ollie gets some pretty loud attention to go be a defensive coordinator. He was very good, and I really enjoyed talking to him whenever we had a chance to. Didn't really have much of a chance to talk to him just because just the nature of what coaches you can talk to. But I like Nate Ollie. You see his energy. It's palpable. And I don't know how many of you guys played football or you were around football. Defensive line coaches and linebacker coaches are a certain breed. You know, like those guys are kind of intense. And it's no surprise that those guys often end up going and being defensive coordinators. But I love his energy. I really am excited for him. I wish him the best, and I want him to stay here in Atlanta as long as possible. Justin says, his press conference makes me love this hire more and more. Yeah, I was a bit lukewarm before really diving into a lot of this Kevin Stefanski stuff. And if you don't believe me, go back and listen to some of these podcasts that I did. I talked a lot about the head coaching search. I wrote a lot about it. I thought Kubiak was going to be the guy. I was all in on Kubiak. And Stefanski was, generally speaking, my B or C option, my second or third option. And the press conference today felt very about the business. Felt very much, this is the work. This is what we need to be doing. It's the fact that it's the simple things. And it was less cheerleader-esque than I think you would have expected from a Raheem Morris press conference. And that's not a knock on Raheem. It's just kind of who he was. A very upbeat, very lively person. But you talk about a lot of a let's get to work type of mentality. And it's great to talk about. It's great to talk about it until we actually see it in action. I mean, it's, again, a grain of salt. It's an introductory press conference. But winning the press conference is something that matters to people like us in the media, matters to fans who haven't seen their team play in the playoffs in 8 years. And I think Kevin Stefanski won the press conference today. I'd say he had a pretty good job. He did a very good job. And I'd say he said the right things. He addressed things properly. He was asked about Baker Mayfield. He took the high road on that, praised his former players, said he was a great competitor, and that he looks forward to a great rivalry with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bam. Perfect. You know, he's somebody who said all the right things. And I'd say it was a win. Now, it's not for sure a win until he shows some wins on the scoreboard. But again, I did get the feeling that it was more process-oriented between him and Matt, which I liked. I really liked that. Maybe fewer walk-through Wednesdays, maybe in the future. John Harrell says, I want more info on the stakes. Yeah, so I wanted to ask him about the Saturday, and I don't know. I jokingly threw in the bit on the stakes because Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, he reported that Arthur Blank cooked up the steaks for him, and he had a potato bar and everything. Pretty intense, pretty extravagant, pretty darn good. But the coolest part was that Arthur Blank was the one cooking for him. And I've never heard of a multi-billionaire who cooks his own steaks, you know? So I thought I was wondering how it could be. So it turns out they were pretty good. Yeah, billionaire stakes. I would imagine I would imagine that the stakes were actually pretty darn good. The cuts were definitely not cheap. I can probably see that. Fire Dog 252 says, "Good job, sir, and love the steak bit at the end of your question." Appreciate you, Fire Dog. Justin comes back and says, "Stefanski will help design the plays most likely, and Tommy Reese will call the plays." Yes. Yep. Nope. I agree. Gabriel Rogers says, "I doubt they invest more in defense than offense." I mean, again, I do too. I'm not predicting that that's going to be the case, Gabriel. I would say that I would be interested to see what that looks like, especially after the investment that you saw them make last year and the difference that it made for the team moving forward. The defense was much improved. The defense still has plenty of room to improve. Offense, your issues are pretty clear. You need a wide receiver. You need several wide receivers, actually. I mean, there's a reason it was the first article that I wrote about free agency. That's going to open up here in about a month and a half or so. And it's going to be pretty telling who they grab, because if you go get a really expensive wide receiver, Alec Pierce is somebody who'd be expensive. I threw George Pickens on there. He was the first guy. He's just going to be somebody who's going to be on every single free agency wish list for damn near every team in the NFL. And he's going to be expensive. George Pickens is going to cost somewhere in the range of $30 to $35 million or something crazy. It's going to be a lot. Alec Pierce is probably going to cost closer to 20. And we'll get into all this too in the coming weeks. We have a lot of time to get into some free agency stuff, but there are a lot of pieces that they can invest in free agency, wide receiver being one of them. Lots of good options. They go affordable in free agency. I think that tells us a little something about what they could be doing in the draft. If they go affordable defensive line, maybe that tells us something. And again, we're grasping at straws to some extent because no one knows what exactly is going on in the inner workings of the brain at Flowery Branch, especially when there is no brain, hasn't been hired yet. I think that it's going to be an interesting thing to watch just as when we get to free agency, because you're going to clear up a lot of money with Kirk Cousins, and then you're going to come back and see what you can do after that. But yeah, good question. Or good comment, I guess you could say. The offense is just, it's going to be an interesting thing to see because you saw the progress that it made last year. So if you throw them a little bit more money, invest in a defensive line, get some run stoppers, see what, get some linebacker depth, I think it could be pretty interesting, and that defense could take a big step forward. Paul says, "How do you win half a game? How do you win half a game?" I would tie. I don't know. Yeah, there you go. Someone else comes back with that. Interesting. I don't know what you're talking about. Ron Carter says, "We should follow the Chicago blueprint, get the O and D lineup to top 10 status." Love it. I think that's great in theory. Everybody wants to have their offense and defense in the top 10. It's not that simple, Ron. It's very difficult. There are 32 teams who are trying to get their units to be the number one unit in the NFL, right? Both teams have both tied to the ball want to do that. It's very difficult to do that. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Depth, and there's no perfect roster in the NFL. Perfect rosters do not exist. I don't care if you're talking about that Patriots team in 2007 who went undefeated before they lost in the Super Bowl. There's no perfect roster in the NFL. It just does not exist. But sure, in theory, I mean, you can talk about the Seahawks too. They figured out a lot of things, and sometimes it's as good just having a great play caller. Happy Hudson says, "We appreciate you too, Garrett." Thank you. Appreciate you. Pre-snap motion and a mirrored run game and play action have become a cheat code in the NFL. So I was happy to hear him talk about implementing that into our offense. I was a big fan. I think that was, I liked the vision that Matt Ryan and Kevin Stefanski laid out for the Falcons. I think there was a lot of potential in what this unit already has. I think there's a lot of potential in what this unit could be. A lot of that comes back to the quarterback position, and taking some pressure off of the quarterback is going to be very important. If you're able to do that effectively, it helps, right? It helps a lot. And I would say that a lot of the plans that I heard today are conducive to helping a young quarterback develop and progress in the NFL. And that's going to be important for Michael Penix. If this team wants to get to a winnable level, to where they're making the playoffs, to where they're competing for playoff games, starts the quarterback. You have to be able to get that right. And how they address it over the next couple of months is going to be very interesting to watch. Happy continues and says, we saw way too much running out of the pistol in short yardage situations last year. Yeah, it sounds like they're going to be going under center. I heard Zach Robinson in his press conference with the Tampa Bay talking about how he likes his philosophy was under center. I chuckled a little bit, not going to lie. Justin says, Michael Penix is the guy. Give him time. I hope so. He gets another year for me. He's getting another year. I'm in with Michael Penix for another year. The problem is if this team, it feels like they are able to compete right away. You're probably not going to do what Vrabel and the Patriots are doing in year one, right? That was a team who spent $120 million or something in free agency. They had a second-year quarterback who exploded, took off, turned into an MVP candidate. I have a hard time believing that's going to be the case. You're in year two of a defensive coordinator. That's great. We'll see. But the offense has some growth. You have some things. That's a big jump. That's a big, big jump from where the Patriots were to what the Patriots are doing now with Vrabel in his first season. But, I mean, give him time. He's got another year. But I have to see him stay healthy. That's just such a big jump. Keith says Penix is going to look, and he corrects himself for later. He says Penix so going to look totally different under Stefanski. I hope so. He showed some promise, and look, early signs from what Michael Penix was. I think you saw some of that arm talent. You saw the potential. I almost think that he was thinking a little too much when he was with Zach Robinson last year. That part worried me a little bit, and he was slow out of his progressions, and I think that caused him to get knocked around a little bit. But ultimately, I do think that having a more quarterback-friendly offense is going to suit him well. It's one of the reasons why I think the offense, to not an elite level, obviously, but with Kirk Cousins when he stepped in, I felt like the offense got better because the offense made more sense for a more experienced quarterback who's going through his progressions at a quicker rate and can kind of break things down with Zach Robinson. Just Cousins was in a better position to do that. He'd been in the NFL for many, many years, and Penix hasn't. So that sort of thing I think mattered a lot. I want to see what it looks like with Stefanski. I think there's a lot of potential there. Gabriel says, it seems like they're going to ask Bijan to carry the offense. Well, he's carried the offense for 3 years. So yeah, probably. Not hopefully to the level that like a Saquon did or even that he did last year. The problem with asking a running back to carry an offense is that it's not generally sustainable. It's not something that lasts a very long time. It's not something that will keep over many, many years, right? You have to find a running mate for him that's going to be used a good bit, right? That's one of the reasons why I think a running back is going to be on the table. I don't think that Tyler Algier is going to be somebody you pay to bring back, but he may fit the Kevin Stefanski scheme. I think that would be a pretty interesting one. It's just, what is he going to ask for? Is he going to ask for $8-9 million? Is he wanting to go be a starting running back in the NFL? Those are all viable questions and important questions that he's going to have to answer for himself, but they're going to need another running back. You cannot ask Bijan Robinson, who's effectively played more as a wide receiver, I would say, as much as a wide receiver as he has running back for the Falcons. He's a Swiss Army knife. He can do a lot of different things, but he's not very useful if he gets hurt. And you have to be careful that you're not overusing him, which I don't think the Falcons did necessarily. He's just that good. It just felt like it at times when he was the only thing that was good for the Falcons for large stretches of the season. Excuse me. Rio comes back on Facebook and says that game that Penix got hurt, he was playing phenomenally well. When he left, we had the lead against Carolina. I'm confident he's our guy. Side note, if we lose Caden Ellis, Walker needs to go off ball. Jalen Walker did play some off-ball linebacker. He wasn't great in that off-ball linebacker last year. They had him focusing specifically on the edge. It would not surprise me all that much to see. This is one of the reasons why I'm actually really happy that Ulbricht's here and he's being retained, is that you're going to see potentially some more versatility from Jalen Walker. Maybe you're going to see a guy who can kind of move around a lot more. If they do lose Caden Ellis, which I would not be all that surprised, I would imagine that they can go and get somebody serviceable in free agency. Again, I haven't dove into the linebacker position yet, but Caden Ellis is somebody who does a lot of different things, and he's very versatile for this team. I would like to see Caden Ellis back. He's 30 years old. He's a leader on this defense. He's somebody that a lot of people look up to. But Jalen Walker, it would provide more of an opportunity for him to do more things, which I think could be a good thing for Jalen. But Jalen was almost exclusively used as an off-ball linebacker, or excuse me, as an edge rusher, and not as an off-ball linebacker. So we'll see. We'll see what that actually looks like. But that's one of the reasons I'm excited for Ulbrich. I see some people are going through and predicting some records. People are saying 12-5, 12-5. Again, this is the day of a press conference is always the people's most confident time. I'm not going to say 12 wins. I don't even know what the over-under is going to be yet. I'm going to peg the over-under at somewhere around 8.5. It's just what Vegas is going to say. I would be very, very surprised if it is any more than 8.5. Again, we'll see. We'll see. Dylan says, what is the biggest free agency player / position you think Atlanta will pursue? Wide receiver. That's going to be the biggest thing that they have to address. They must address the wide receiver position. I mean, obviously quarterback is big, but I do think that they're going to go kind of a budget area with that. I want to say that maybe you can trade a 7th round pick, or maybe a 2027 7th round pick for some of these guys. Like if you want to go get a Will Levis, I know some people were talking a lot on social media recently about a Will Levis and his potential fit of just coming in and seeing what you can do over training camp. Maybe if you want to go get a Jacoby Brissett, if you want to go get a Mac Jones or something, you're going to have to trade to go get those guys. It just depends on what it's going to actually end up costing you. But that's going to be a big position. But ultimately, defensive line and wide receiver are the two that I really want to see this unit or this team invest in free agency. That it's going to be huge because Drake London he's going to be coming into his 5th year. You've already picked up his 5th year option. You need to give him an extension. That's going to be something the Falcons are going to have to consider. But how they address it, like say they go get a George Pickens or something like that. Maybe that says to me that they're looking to potentially move on from Drake London. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but again, you have to read some of these tea leaves and look at some potential things because it's a new general manager. It's a new front office. It's a new coaching staff. They're not tied to a lot of these players anymore. So however they look to address things in free agency, maybe that's a bit of a tell. So wide receiver, defensive line, I think those are the two most important things. This team needs some run stuffers. David Onyemata was good in that. That was one of his more prominent roles, I guess you could say, for this team. And you're losing him, probably. I mean, I would imagine that he's going to be moving on. So I think that's going to be a major thing moving forward. I see you guys keep rolling through some comments there. You're talking to each other. I appreciate that. All right, let's get into this question here from Dylan. It says GM frontrunner. Let's dig into this one because per a report from Albert Breer, but also several different people, different insiders across the NFL, they reported that they have a pair of finalists for the position. So it is Ian Cunningham of the Chicago Bears. He's the assistant general manager there, and James Lipford. He's the assistant general manager of the Houston Texans. I will say these are the two that I really was biggest on coming into this process. Cunningham has long felt like he has been the favorite for the role, but that's mostly because the Falcons put in the first request for him back in beginning of January, and then they've sat on it. Now, he was the only one that they had up until last week after Kevin Stefanski was hired, right? He was a finalist for the role for president of football. And they interviewed 6 different candidates over the course of the last week or so. And these are the 2 that they settled on. Cunningham, I really like, but Lipford is one who's kind of come along recently. Cunningham, like I said, he's the assistant general manager of the Bears. He cut his teeth with Howie Roseman, with Ozzie Newsome, had a front row seat to how just interactions are made and all this other stuff is how the sausage is made, if you will. He's played a central role with the Bears. He helped them win an NFC North title. And I mean, I was intrigued by that. You know, I thought that that's something that I found to be interesting, just based off his success, based off of his involvement with teams who win. That's an important thing to keep in mind. But he's also connected to Ryan Poles, who is his general manager in Chicago. and the teammates with Matt Ryan going back to their time at Boston College. But Lippert is somebody who he's a scouting guy. He's somebody who has been a player personnel guy. He's done it from the pro ranks. He's done it from the college ranks, but specifically his draft acumen. I love the idea. I like a decision maker, a great decision maker. But if you were to go with somebody who has cut his teeth in the scouting, you look at some of the notable draftees that he's had throughout his selection process. He's one of the reasons. I mean, obviously your top end successes, like your Will Harrison, Will Anderson, you have your Derek Stingley Jr., you have CJ Stroud, you have guys like that. But it's the middle round players that I was most intrigued by. Henry To'oTo'o from Tennessee, and then he went to Alabama. Nico Collins, you have Jonathan Grenard. I mean, there are some really good players in the mid rounds that Lippert pounded the table for, supposedly, and that turned Houston into a 12-win football team. You know, there's no mistake that they've won several AFC South titles since he's been there. And he's coming up through the ranks with the New England Patriots. He won Super Bowls there. I like the fit. I like the fit. And he's from the area. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but it doesn't mean all that much necessarily. But just the idea of him coming back to Atlanta, it's kind of a cool storyline. But ultimately, I think those are your two front runners right now. It's going to be one of those two guys, and hopefully there's an answer here over the next couple of days. I had said on the last podcast that I thought it was going to happen over the weekend. I was kind of surprised it didn't. I thought it was ultimately going to happen on Monday, but then the report came that there were some finalists, and now we know. Matt Ryan says that he's pretty happy with where they stand in the process. The next major date for anything, too, is February 17th. They have representatives that are down in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, and they've had some other people for the East-West Shrine Bowl. They have scouts and other personnel guys who are staying on and are going through the process of all this stuff down there. So you have people. You have representatives there. I know a lot of people were concerned about that fact, but, I mean, who they hire next is the next big thing. We have another super chat from Rio Smith. Says, keep up the good work. I appreciate you, Rio. Thank you so much. And big shout out to you as well, Rio. Thank you. But ultimately, I think the team is in pretty good shape moving forward. Gabriel Rogers says, I'm scared Penix was the reason they didn't go under center. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. That's something that I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that that's necessarily the only reason. I think based off of some questions that were asked of Zach Robinson, it seemed a lot like he was a big reason why they didn't go under center. It was just that he thought he could get the same stuff out of running in the pistol as people did when they were running out of shotgun or when they were running running under center. And he said it gave him more options, whatever. We'll see. We'll see. Alex pounding the table for Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones would be great. Keith says Malik Willis. I don't think it's going to be Malik Willis, unfortunately. I would love for a Malik Willis to come to Atlanta. His potential is interesting to me. I think he could do a lot of different things. I think he's also an Atlanta native, so that's pretty cool. Again, not a major factor for me in that, but it's just sort of, it's a cool storyline. Malik is going to want to be a starter. He is not going to be a starter in Atlanta. And he's not going to roll the dice in such a way that he's not going to be a guaranteed starter, right? If you talk about the New York Jets or the Cleveland Browns or places like that, I think you have a better shot. I just don't think it's going to be the case in Atlanta. Dossier Gaming, again, super chats, best way to jump straight to the front of the line. Big thank you to everybody who's contributed here so far. Dossier Gaming has this to say, said, what do you think about the structure change where president and head coach lead the organization and GM not as important? That's not exactly the setup. I think this is an important thing to keep in mind. The GM is still extremely important, and it's different for every organization. But the general manager, according to Matt Ryan, is the exact same position as it's been. It's the exact same position as it's been. He just reports to Matt instead of Arthur Blank. Yeah. Some organizations like Billy Beane up in Buffalo, the head coach is going to report to the general manager. Other places, that's not the case. And you have in Shane is reporting to John Harbaugh in New York, right? It's different in a lot of different places. But the general manager is still going to be making personnel decisions according to Matt Ryan. Kevin Stefanski, he might have a say in something. He'll have his opinion shared. That's what he talked about today. He'll share his opinion, but he's not a guy who's going to have to report to the GM, and the GM's not reporting to him, and they'll work together. There's a level of collaboration that exists, but the GM is making personnel decisions. But thank you, Dossier Gaming, for the question. Let's see. Keith says, please, Penix was under center in college. He did play some under center. He played some under center this year. It's not like he's incapable of playing under center. It's just when you see a lot of the rates and percentages when Michael Penix was the starting quarterback for the Falcons, it was pretty glaring. I think that's all the person was saying. And Zach Robinson, he comes back and says, Zach Robinson's preference, which is something that he did. Keep on going through. I'm just going through some more of these comments. Hey, there's something. Falcons 2027 Super Bowl champions. Wouldn't that be an absolute dream? I know a lot of people have lost a lot of sleep over the last time this team was in a Super Bowl, and I think that getting back and winning one, I think, would be just, man, one of the few organizations who's never done it. But we'll see. We'll see. That'd be wonderful. I mean, that would be tremendous. Even if it happens after 2027, I don't care. Like right after like in the 2027 regular season into 2028 is what I'm saying. Let's see. Adriana Copeland. I think that's what it says. I'm sorry. It says Ian Cunningham. I think Ian Cunningham has a great shot. I don't know what that profile picture was. I don't know what the hell that was there. Oh man. Gabriel Rogers says Malik would beat out Penix. Come on. Yeah, and that's also, we're assuming that would happen. I just think he's going to go somewhere where he's a better shot at being a starter. We also don't know if he would or not. We have no idea. Maybe they bring Kirk Cousins back and they have a quarterback battle that way. A guy who's already familiar with this roster, familiar with this franchise, stuff like that. I don't think that's going to be what happens, but theoretically it could be. But yeah, I don't think it's any guarantee. Is Malik Willis that much better of a quarterback than Michael Penix? Is he? We don't know. We don't know that. Certainly not that. We don't know that for sure. But yeah, I don't know what your profile picture, Adrian Copeland, is. I'm not going to flash it back up on the screen. Sorry. But it says, do you think Stefanski could improve Penix as a quarterback? Yeah, I do. I do. And I think ultimately, and I'll finish with this. I do think that Kevin Stefanski will help Michael Penix. And I think it's going to reveal a lot about where the Falcons are as an organization. If Penix can come in and be a serviceable, strong quarterback for the Falcons in 2026, then you're talking about a team who can go to the playoffs. If they can't, then this is a team who's going to be picking in the top 10, top 15 again. That's just where it comes back to. The defense is good, but it's not elite. And this is why I talked a little bit earlier in the podcast about seeing what you can do by fully investing in a defense. Because the Denver Broncos had an elite defense. That took them to an AFC championship game. The Seahawks had an elite defense. That took them to a Super Bowl. The Patriots, the Jacksonville Jaguars had a great defense. The Texans. Defense is critical. And what we've seen in recent years is a return to some more of that defensive dominance. Those years of when Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, these guys are throwing up 30-plus points per game. It happens occasionally. Kubiak's offense in Seattle, I mean, they're scoring a bunch of points. The Rams scored 30 points a game. Like you can still see some of that. But it's a lot more common that you're going to have teams who are scoring 20 points a game than any more than that. And having a defense that can shut down opposing offenses is so freaking valuable. And I think the Falcons are closer to that unless they figure out the quarterback position. I don't think the Falcons have that kind of defense right now. I think they could if they invested in it more. It needs some more love. It's not something that's going to be fixed in one offseason. It's something that you saw Terry Fontenot in this front office start leaning into a little bit more in recent years. But you saw what a little bit of work did for this defense and what it meant for this team. They were still below 500, but I think that had more to do with the quarterback position. And if you really invest in the defensive side of the ball, I think this team can be closer to actually competing for stuff. And that was the biggest turnaround for teams like the Patriots. Drake May went nuclear. You go get a good outside receiver like a Stephon Diggs. You get a Travion Henderson, who's a solid running back in the backfield, and you invest in that offensive line. that they went and spent a ton of money on defense. And that's been their biggest turnaround. That's what's gotten them back into this rarefied air. And I think the Falcons can get there. I think that a turnaround is possible, but they're years away from a Super Bowl. And I unless the quarterback position takes off, that is the thing that's holding them back right now. I think you're serviceable in a lot of positions. You're really good in others. But until you figure out and solidify the quarterback position, we're just going to be pounding our head against the wall. And I think Michael Penix has the potential to be that guy. He could. But like I said earlier, until he does a full 17 games and you see what he can do and he can actually show some consistency, he doesn't even have to be up here. Just not down here. And if he can just live along the straight line and just be consistent, like if he comes out and he does a Bo Nix, I think I would take that. Because Bo Nix has been, he's a solid quarterback, and people talk, trash him, whatever. He's a serviceable quarterback, but he's somebody who you know what you're going to get, and it's this. At the very least, Bo Nix was this. And you had that with a great defense. All of a sudden, you're talking about a team who's a couple plays away from playing a Super Bowl. Now, if Bo Nix doesn't get hurt, they're probably playing in a Super Bowl. But either way, this group felt about the business today. I think you win the press conference. I think there's something to be said for it. It's not a lot, but ultimately, until they figure out the quarterback position, we're just going to be talking in circles. But it's been fun. I really appreciate you guys. We got more stuff to talk about here on Thursday. We've got tons of things coming out here for Falcons on SI. So make sure to give me a follow at GChapATL on Twitter. That's the best way to stay up to date on everything that we got going on. But definitely go check out Falcons on SI. Go Google that. Go check out everything that we have coming out there. When we get into later in the show, we'll get into draft needs. We'll get into free agency stuff, extensions, things of that nature, and we will do all of that. And I'm going to try to keep you guys entertained and informed as best I possibly can. I really appreciate all the love, all the support that you guys show me. It means the world to me. So share it with your friends. I would love to continue to grow this community through the off season and just keep creating in as much Falcons content as I can to you as much as I can. So it's been a pleasure, been a lot of fun. Until next time, we got a lot to get into, and maybe we'll have a general manager by the next time we talk, but time will tell. But until then, I'll see you next Thursday. And like always, go Falcons.